So there's been a whole lot of talk lately within the Ashes of Creation community regarding add-ons and DPS meters. And for the record, technically, I guess a DPS meter is an add-on, although in some games it's not. So it gets kind of hazy right there. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to kind of separate the two of them. We're going to pull DPS meters out of the add-on box. We're going to talk about add-ons and we're going to talk about DPS meters, and the little bit of the reasons why and why not you should and shouldn't have these additions to your game, or these features in your game. The kind of too long didn't watch version of this video is basically I think that both sides of this argument are completely ignoring totally valid points brought out by the other side in order to justify their own position. I guess it's a lot like politics in that way. And so, but that's the too long didn't watch version. If you want some details on that, I'm going to get into that right now. So we're going to start with the add-ons. Add-ons are, in case you're not aware, in case you haven't been doing MMOs for long, or you're one of the people who are the reason why people argue add-ons shouldn't exist. Add-ons are things that you can download outside of the game. So you actually have to leave the game and go to a website or a third-party application and download these, and they affect the way the game works. So, for example, in World of Warcraft, there's an add-on that makes it where across the screen it flashes and tells you what to do during boss fights. Like, this mechanic is coming, you need to jump, prepare for this, save your cooldowns for this, or whatever. Those types of things. There's ones that save you time, like if there's a daily task you have to repeat over and over again and it's kind of repetitive and you just have to click a whole bunch of buttons. A really good example is the Elder Scrolls Online crafting quests that you have to do every day if you want to continue to have all the recipes for crafting. You got to do it every day, and you got to go from station to station and remember what needs to be made and make it all. And it's a pain in the butt. And people made an add-on that basically does it for you. You have to run from station to station, but you just click on the station and it automatically just makes all the items that you were supposed to make. And then you go turn them in, and then at the turn in section, you had to click 3 or 4 times, like, yes, I want to turn it in. Yes, I want this. And then drag all the stuff into your inventory, and it just automatically does it all for you. It like almost creates a macro for you inside of the game. And these can be very, very helpful, but let's talk a little bit about the negative aspect of those. And the biggest negative aspect, or the thing that people, the most valid argument that people make, is basically this is a tool that only a very small percentage of the population of a game knows about and uses. And I know this to be the truth. That is 100% the truth. I have a good friend. He and I have been playing MMOs together for 20 years. I mean, a long time. I guess we met in 2001. So 20 years. We've been playing MMOs together for 20 years. And if it weren't for me, he would have never used add-ons ever. And then even more, to add on to that or make it even deeper, even the people who do know about them, a lot of them are not, I don't want to say able, but I would say probably not willing to do the research to figure out how to install them, especially back in the day. There was a lot of copying and pasting of files, and sometimes you had to go into a file and change little things. If you've ever tried to do Minecraft add-ons or Minecraft server, I know that my 16-year-old's always doing that, and he's always having to ask me to come in there and do it. And I'm always telling him, if you're going to be a PC gamer, you need to figure this stuff out. And so I won't help him, but he's got to figure it out for himself. But anyways, that is kind of an argument that people make, is that not only are not many people using it, but or even know about it, a lot of people who do know about it still don't use it because it's too complicated or too hard, or they're not willing, or they're not able, or whatever, to use them. And that is the truth. That is exactly how it works. And so you are giving a competitive advantage, even though it's not a direct advantage. Like it's not fighting the PvP battle for you. But if I have to log on and it takes me 20 minutes to do all these stupid quests, to craft a bunch of things and get it all done, and you can log on and do it in 2 or 3 minutes because of add-ons that you have an advantage, because any day that I'm not feeling like doing it, I might not do it. Whereas you, it's like, it's 3 minutes, whatever. You just pop in and get it done and it's over. So that's kind of the downside to it. The positive side is a lot of these developers, because you have to understand that there is a balance that MMO development or MMO companies are trying to do, where they want you to stay in the world. They want you to stay logged in as much as they can, because when you and other people are logged in, the game seems more lively. And so then therefore people continue to think that it's a live game, a game that's still popular. And so they'll continue to play it. It's social proof. So they're trying to rely on social proof to get you to continue playing because other people are playing. But at the same time, they need to slow down how quickly you get things and advance and level up and get the highest crafting and, you know, all of that. Because if you do it too quickly, then you'll leave. And when you start leaving, then other people start leaving. And then other people who would have just stayed because everybody else is playing, they start leaving too. And they go to other games that other people are playing. And so then the game dies. And so it's one of those situations where they are trying to both keep you in game and slow you down from getting anything done at the same time. And one of the ways they do that is putting in monotonous, I would even say boring, but necessary things like the Elder Scrolls Online crafting quests. But every game essentially has these things that you have to do every day that it sucks or whatever. And so add-ons can help with that. They can kind of take away the monotony of that, or save you from, you know, making, well, we're gamers, so let's say not save you from getting carpal tunnel, but delay its onset for a while. And, you know, because so you're not having to push so many buttons and so many mouse clicks. So when it comes to add-ons, my stance is I think developers should stop doing this. They should stop putting these things in the game that somebody's going to come along and find a way to make it more convenient, and then everybody's going to want to use a thing that makes it more convenient. Just design it or develop it more convenient. Problem solved. We don't need to go any further than that. Now, one of the advantages that Ashes has over a lot of these other MMOs when it comes to that is they have taken the pursuit of individual goals or individual fame or gear or whatever, and they have made that a collective goal. Essentially, your node and the level of your node and all that stuff is going to supersede your own individual stuff to a fairly large degree. And so there's not going to be as much of that need to slow you down, because if there's going to be other players, other groups of players, other collectives of players that are going to come and knock down your node, and you're going to have to rebuild it and all of that stuff. So by doing that, and I don't think this is the reason why they did it, but I think the byproduct is there won't be a need to put systems in the game that are monotonous and overly click heavy and all that stuff in order to keep you busy and in the game, because you're going to be busy and in the game because there's so much stuff to do that's going to be important to you and your collective, namely your node, sometimes your guild. So that's going to help with that. As far as Ashes specifically, other MMOs, they've got to stop with these tasks that they're putting in the game and make it where you can do them easily and conveniently. All right, so now on to what I think is a much more touchy subject, and that is DPS meters. I have been a hardcore raider in various MMOs, but mostly Star Wars: The Old Republic, for the better part of the last decade. Okay, so that is kind of the background that I'm drawing on when I'm talking about DPS meters. And so let's real quickly again start off with the negative aspect of the DPS meters. The biggest negative aspect of it is it creates elitism or cliques, or, you know, however you want to put that. And just like with the add-on negative, I can tell you 100% that is true. It is so true that just the presence of DPS meters makes for pretty elitist, douchey acting in most cases. Now, not every single person is like that. One of my favorite people I ever met met in my entire life. He went by the moniker Camels in Star Wars: The Old Republic. He was as humble and kind of a person as you'll ever meet in your whole life, and he was a god tier DPS on any class. It didn't matter. One time he was with our group, and he was like, "Yeah, I want to try it on this class," and we're like, "Try it." He's like, "Well, yeah, I've never done this fight on that class, but I want to try it." And we're like, "Okay." And he jumps in and he out DPS everybody by like 2,000 or 3,000, which in SWTOR at the time that was a lot, and like a lot. And it was just like, this guy's god tier, and he was a super nice guy, and he didn't talk down to anybody, and he didn't berate people for their bad DPS and all that stuff. However, most of the people that I know that were in that community, the parsing, trying to keep up with their DPS, that part of the community, they were super elitist and they were super douchebaggy to everybody that they met. And if you couldn't compete on the level that they competed at, then they would, make fun of you and talk trash, even though, maybe I can, paint the Sistine Chapel and you can't draw stick figures, but I'm not as good at DPS as you, or whatever it is. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. I really hate that, but so that's the negative aspect of DPS meters. And it's true. Like, in World of Warcraft, apparently people get kicked out of dungeon groups and stuff because their DPS isn't high enough. And I'm like, the dungeons are easy. Like everybody just walks through them. Who gives a crap if one guy's doing less DPS, but whatever. So that's the negative aspect. The positive aspect of DPS meters, for me, centers all around rating. Now, can they be used in PvP to measure some stuff? Sometimes. It's a little bit of a shady or gray area because you have all the defensive cooldowns that are being rolled through people, and depending on who you're attacking, it's not a 1-to-1 comparison. My DPS is versus your DPS. If I'm hitting the squishy wizard the entire time and you're attacking a tank who has cooldowns and heavy armor and stuff, and he's going to mitigate a whole bunch of the DPS. So you can use it in PvP, but it's not the same tool. Whereas in a raid, everybody's hitting the same target. It's a good indicator of the overall talent or skill or performance of a player in any given area. And so I want to show you guys a very specific portion of a very specific fight in Star Wars: The Old Republic to kind of illustrate my point. So here we go. All right, so what we have here is the fight at the end of the Dread Fortress operation in Star Wars: The Old Republic called Dreadmaster Brontis. And this fight is in Nightmare mode. That's the highest difficulty in the game. And I'm going to let it run forward here just a second, and then I'm going to pause it at a certain point as they get ready to transition into this new phase. Okay, so right then, boom, they are transitioning into this new phase. This happens when Brontis gets to 50% every time. And what's going to happen is she's going to shoot lightning straight forward from where she's pointing. And then these droids are going to drop down. You'll see them here and here. And at this point in story mode and hard mode, Brontis always rotates clockwise. And so this droid over here is the droid that everyone is trying to kill. However, in Nightmare mode, you do not know. It is random. She may go clockwise and she may go counterclockwise. And the thing is, if the lightning that she's shooting touches a droid, it's a wipe. And I don't mean that it sets off a series of events that always leads to a wipe, or if everybody has cooldowns, they can potentially, overcome it. It literally kills everyone in the raid instantly with 0 damage. Like the damage, the little kill indicator that's in the chat log says you were killed with 0 damage. It means there's no way to avoid it. It's an instant wipe automatically if the lightning even touches the droid. And so you'll notice here it starts going clockwise. And so everyone in the team, that's the healers are helping, the tanks are helping, the DPS have saved everything that they can to get over here and take down this droid. And I want you guys to see how close they are to being wiped. That is about to touch it, and it just barely died in time. And then they have to move on to the next one, and it keeps going around and around and around. And if your DPS is good, it gets a little better each time. So as they're going around, they start to clear it with more and more and more time. It's that first one that is the problem. And as a raid leader, someone who has been a raid leader for, again, the better part of the last decade, I can tell you that without a parse meter, without my ability to see who is performing and who isn't, there's no way for me to know. I can guess, I can take educated guesses and sometimes be right, but not always. And there's not a really good solid way for me to know which individual DPS in that group is the one that's not performing up to the standard that's required to do that. And without me knowing, how are we supposed to ever clear the fight? I'm going to rotate people in randomly and reteach them the fight and all that. That is where you start getting the necessity of DPS meters. So that gets us into the topic of whether or not raiding in Ashes of Creation is going to exist in that form, in the form of really tight scripted boss fights where the margin for error is as small as what I just showed you. I mean, you guys saw that it was this close, like they were this close to wiping the entire raid. And in that particular video, I didn't play it all the way through, but they go on to kill that boss, and it was their first kill of the boss, and they all cheer and are excited and all that stuff, as they should. So that is kind of the positive aspect of DPS meters, the ability to measure yourself, and you can use it to compete with yourself to continue getting better for yourself. I know, for example, when I first found out about parse meters, the very first time, I found out that I was doing roughly 1/4 of the amount of DPS that a similarly geared player should be doing, or could be doing. I guess could's a better word, could be doing if they were using the right rotation and all of that stuff. And once I figured that out, I started practicing, and all of a sudden my talent and skill for the game went, through the roof, in comparison to what it was before. So it's definitely a tool that's helpful. And again, for raid leaders, it allows you to build out your team so that you can tackle the hardest possible content in the game. So that is the kind of the positive and negative aspects of parse meters and add-ons. And so here is my solution to this issue. And in case I didn't mention it earlier in the video, they have already said, the developers of Ashes of Creation have already said the game will not have add-ons or parse meters, DPS meters. They're not going to have them. I think that's a mistake on the DPS meters part. On the add-ons, I think that sometimes they're nice, but if you build the game correctly, they're not necessary. So here's my solution for the DPS meters. Star Wars: The Old Republic actually is in the exact same boat. They do not have add-ons and they do not have DPS meters. What they ended up having to do, and this is my understanding, I was not there in the early days of raiding in Star Wars: The Old Republic, so I don't know this. So what I was told is that in the early days of Star Wars: The Old Republic, there was no ability whatsoever to measure DPS. And they were running into the problem that I was just describing. Now, not on that fight, because that fight is a lot newer than the original fights that were in the game. But there were teams that were trying to clear those fights, and they couldn't meet the DPS checks, and they didn't know who was the one to blame, or two or three to blame, for them not meeting the DPS checks. They had no idea. And BioWare was adamant about not having the ability for people to just see your DPS in a dungeon and throw you out because you're not doing proper DPS, which I totally get. I'm on board with. That is the correct decision. And so what they did was they allowed you to push a little button in game. You had to go into your settings and purposely push a button that said enable combat logging to file. And all that did was it took your combat log and put it on a file on your computer. That's it. That's all that button does. And what you can do is you can go download a third-party program that does not interact with the game at all. So they didn't have to release an API key or anything like that. So it's not an add-on. It's a third-party program. All it does is parse through that combat logging file and be able to read you your DPS, basically. And then people got more clever about it, and they made a little program that you can purposely, through username and password and everything, join someone's parse group. And so entire raid teams join into a parse group. They can see each other's DPS, but you still can't see random person, anybody who didn't purposely join the parse group. And you have to tell it every time you get in, at any time you want to. Basically, you can turn it on and off, the ability for your friends or raid group members or whatever to see your parsing. And I think that's a great solution. That way, the raiding community can see what the information they needed to see to get through the hardest raids and the most difficult raids, but they can't use it to go into dungeons and tell more casual or just not as talented, players who aren't trying to push the live on the bleeding edge of the content, and tell them, how bad they are and talk trash and ruin their experience and kick them out of the game. So that's my take on it. And if I had to take a wild guess, I would say one of two things are going to be true. Either the rating in Ashes of Creation is not going to be this style of rating where they're going to release bosses with multiple difficulty levels, and the hardest difficulty levels are going to be extremely, extremely hard, and the most coordinated and talented groups of people are going to be the only ones who ever take them down. And whether that's through the release of bosses that actually have multiple difficulty levels, or the whole system that they've explained, where, in case you don't know this, they've explained that like the better you perform against the first boss in a raid, it makes the next boss harder, and so on up until the last boss, and it can make it the hardest difficulty. Whatever that hardest difficulty of the last boss is, my guess is that it will not be that difficult. Like it's not going to be. It's going to be more like Elder Scrolls Online, where you have 2 to 3 times the necessary DPS to beat the enrage timer, whereas with Star Wars: The Old Republic, and in many cases World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, those other like the hardcore raiding games, your DPS is just barely above the enrage meter, so at the hardest difficulties, and so everybody has to be on their best. That's going to be true. Or this other thing, like what Star Wars: The Old Republic did, will be true, where they will allow us to access our combat log, and then a third-party program will get developed by somebody, and we'll be able to do it through there. And then at that point, then maybe the bosses will be that difficult and have that extremely narrow margin. One of those two things is what I guess will be true. That's my take on add-ons and DPS meters. Add-ons, meh. DPS meters, I think they're really important for rating. I would really interested in what's your take, and what do you think of my solution? Do you think that my solution would work, where you don't have to worry about people talking trash to you in dungeons, but the rating community still gets what they need? I'm really curious what you guys think. Let me know down in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe, because I'm going to be putting out a video. They pushed back the test date to tomorrow instead of today. I should be testing Ashes of Creation right now, but they pushed it back one day. So on Friday, I will be releasing a video, and I'll go through everything that happened during the test, tell you guys what specifically we were testing and how successful the test was, all that stuff. If you want to get that video, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys on Friday.